And so you don't need 10 new habits. You don't need a whole to-do list of different behaviors like I had. What you need is to get simple. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Known Disciple Project podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hummel. On this podcast, we talk all about personal growth and spiritual development, tying the two things together for seriously growth minded disciples of Jesus. Today, we're going to talk about something that is really important for us to understand as growth minded people, as disciples, and just in the personal growth lane at all. We're going to be talking about something that is called a keystone habit. As we get into this, have you ever asked yourself why you can't change? Have you ever just thought to yourself, I really want to change, but then you don't? Before you know it, time goes on, weeks go on, months go on, and you have just figured out that you're actually the same person you were months ago or years ago. And it's really difficult to cause change in our life, especially change in a positive direction if we're unwinding a lot of maybe habits we no longer want to keep, habits that we want to be a part of us. Paul had this struggle too. In Romans 7:15, he said, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. See, Paul had this battle of internally desiring to do certain things, but externally, he would find himself still kind of doing things that were not pleasing to him. The reason that that was happening is because he was being transformed in his mind while also doing his best to unwind other habits or different things that he no longer wanted to be a part of himself. This is a real struggle for Christians every day. It's a struggle for people in general. It is just hard stuff. And so in today's episode, I want to try to make it more simple for all of us as growth minded Christians by introducing one concept that can help you cut out a lot of the complexity that goes into creating a new lifestyle for yourself or sticking to your new positive discipleship habits. So by the end of this episode, we're going to identify what your keystone habit is. We're going to talk about roadblocks, how to understand what roadblocks are in the way, and how to begin to address them or remove them. And then we're going to talk about how to use your weekly rhythms to get your life aligned and stay aligned. Super, super important. So this isn't all about hustle. This is about structuring our life so that we're looking more like Jesus and less like the world every day. Let's go. Tell me if this looks anything like you. So when I first got into personal development and personal growth, I really started to understand through study and through talking to other people that I could actually take some level of control over who I am, the results that I'm getting in my life, and all of the things that were coming my way. In fact, it kind of just blew my mind to understand that most of what I was getting in life, most of the results I was getting in life, were the result of the way I was showing up. I was all in from the start. You were telling me that I could actually craft my future. I could decide the type of person I wanted to be and then become that person over time. That was exactly what I needed to hear way back then when I got into all of this personal growth stuff. But if you're anything like me, what this might look like for you is that you instantly started listing out 100 things that you wanted to change about yourself or 100 things you wanted to start doing or stop doing. And it was just completely overwhelming. You wanted to get up at 5 a.m. and read the entire Bible and go to the gym and only eat healthy food and only communicate in a positive way and become a better leader and show up better for your business. And all of these different things just eventually created this to-do list of behaviors a mile long. And guess what the research shows when we have too many high-level things to focus on in our life? The research shows that we really just won't change at all. In fact, if we have more than maybe 1 to 3 high-level focuses at any given point in time, we'll typically get 1 or 2 of those done. But if it's more than 3, then we're typically not going to get anything done. Isn't that wild? I didn't learn that for a long time. And so for a long time, I just had this to-do list or this task list, this behavior list, as I called it, of things that I wanted to do, the way that I wanted to develop, the direction I wanted to develop myself. Just checking boxes, checking boxes, checking boxes. Okay, the boxes didn't get checked. I had so many things on that list that it was just overwhelming. And so, week over week, month over month, sometimes year over year, I would look at my list and go, dang, I didn't do that. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I'm still struggling with this problem. I'm still struggling with that problem. And it wasn't until I realized through, again, learning and being coached and being around really smart people that helped me. It wasn't until I realized that making it more simple was the key, not making it more complex. And what I had done is made my life really complex. So, what does it look like to have a very simple personal growth plan or even a spiritual development plan? Not to leave God out of it and to leave out the Holy Spirit and its role in our development, but just to focus on the things that we do have control over. For example, what we're going to do with our time and our effort and our energy. Well, that's the transition most of us need to make in the personal growth space is going from I'm doing a million different things or desire to do a million different things to I really am just going to focus on a few really important high impact things. And there's one concept that will help us do that more than anything else. And so that's our first big idea for today is unpacking this idea of keystone habits. Keystone habits are something that create this enormous ripple effect in our day. And whether you know what this is or whether you know what your keystone habit is, you do have one. So this idea comes from Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit, one of my favorite books when you want to learn more about habits and how we sort of operate, how our minds work, and you want to change your habits. Maybe check out that book, The Power of Habit. So Charles talked about keystone habit being the one behavior that triggers other positive behaviors in your life. Now, I believe it can go both directions. We can have a keystone habit that triggers both positive and negative behaviors. And so if you just pause right there, if you just think about all of the things that you do in your life, all of the habits that you have, chances are there's one that if you do that thing, all of your positive habits follow. And the same is true going the other way. For example, if you do that one negative thing, other negative things follow. I'll give you an example, a real life example. In the negative side of things, people who struggle with alcohol abuse typically struggle with many other bad habits as well. Poor sleep, poor eating, maybe their relationships start to suffer. And it all starts with their keystone habit of, I'll have a drink, I'm in control. On the other side of that, a more positive example would be if somebody wants to sleep better, eat better, maybe have more positive relationships, one keystone habit that makes all of that easier might be a daily exercise routine or weightlifting or running or whatever it is that you enjoy, something positive that triggers other positive behaviors. And so for you, this is one of those Luke 16:10 principles in my mind. It says, if you are faithful in little things, you'll be faithful in large ones. So if we can break down this giant plan, this giant personal growth journey into just one thing that we could focus on, it would be a keystone habit. And so you don't need 10 new habits. You don't need a whole to-do list of different behaviors like I had. What you need is to get simple. Here's how you identify your keystone habit. You can actually decide what it is. If you already have one, it'll be something like this. What's the one thing I do in my day or in my week that if I do it, I'm in a more positive mindset and all of the other positive things that I want to do typically get done in an easier way. One habit that if I do it, everything else is easier and just tends to happen. If you don't have a keystone habit already, then you can identify one. For example, I already shared mine with you. If I'm in the gym regularly lifting weights, which is something that I love, then I'm way more likely to eat better, to treat people right, to be more patient, to get more sleep, to want to read more, and everything else just follows from me being in a positive mindset because I'm exercising. Maybe exercise isn't your thing. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's hanging out with somebody that just gives life to you. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's reading a good book. Maybe it is whatever you decide. It doesn't have to be written in stone. You can actually play around with this and experiment. So that's the biggest point for this podcast episode today is for you to identify your keystone habit, the one thing that you could do in your day that causes a cascade or a flood of other positive movements in your day. All right. So, big point number two today is to remove roadblocks. It's really important in coaching because I spent a lot of time as a coach. It's really important in coaching to help people identify roadblocks so that they can remove roadblocks before they ever happen. We don't think about this every day. We just kind of get to roadblocks and we get to things like fatigue or I don't feel like it or I'm tired. And all of a sudden, we're just not doing the things we said were important to us because these little roadblocks just slow us down, slow us down, slow us down until all of a sudden we're stopped. Well, a key concept for you is to anticipate roadblocks and remove them before you get to them. And so, one way you can do this is to take a look at your day, your actual day, like go through it, your morning, what you do for work in the evenings, and go through your entire week like this, day by day by day, and just kind of get an idea for the things that slow you down, exhaust you, get in your way to keep you from achieving your keystone habit. Okay. Make a list of these things, and we're not judging these things. We're not calling them bad. So, for example, if you have a job that causes you to talk to people a lot, and so then you're tired mentally because you're talking all day long, we're not going to judge that as bad. It just is. And so that's the key here with your roadblocks. We're not judging them. We're just bringing awareness to them so that we can then address them. All right. So, your typical roadblocks will be things like time, no clear space in your day. Maybe you're stretched too thin and you're too exhausted to actually do anything by the time you get to the new habits that you want to have in your life. You could be taking on really big chunks of change rather than breaking it down to a keystone habit. Or you could feel some sort of pressure to perform rather than just understanding you're practicing your new keystone habits and your new lifestyle and the habits. Here's the serious takeaway for this section, roadblocks. You're just not always going to feel like doing it. Okay. So that's why it is so important that as we're anticipating roadblocks and identifying a keystone habit, that we are realists about this. We get excited about our goals until the excitement wears off. And then it's like, did we ever have a goal to begin with? So if you've done the work so far of getting a keystone habit identified in your life and listing out roadblocks and beginning to the work of removing roadblocks, the one that you will never be able to remove is that you just won't always feel like doing your keystone habits. Well, what do we do about that? One of the things I love about the book Outliers, I'm going to reference lots of books all the time on my podcast here. Sorry. In this book, it talks about the most successful people, the outliers, being people who had the skill of continuing on with their goals and their habits after the excitement had worn off. And so, my version that I would suggest to you would be to decide now that as you work on your keystone habit and you remove roadblocks, that when you get to the roadblock of, I don't feel like it, it's really just your mind saying, I'm not excited about it. That's not a reason not to do it, though. So, you're going to keep going. You're deciding right now that as soon as I identify that roadblock, or I have identified that roadblock, and as soon as I get to it, I'm just going to keep going and do it anyway. This will change your life. Now, the beauty of this is that we've made it so simple. All you have to do is accomplish your keystone habit rather than hold in your mind all of the things that you need to remember to do. For example, I used to have a morning routine that had like 8 to 10 things in it. And I didn't actually fail in my morning routine because I didn't want to do it. I failed often though because I just couldn't remember to do all of those things. And so it was clear to me that doing tons of things was not the way, doing few things was. Okay. So that's point number two, anticipate roadblocks and remove them. A key scripture we could use for this is Hebrews 12:1, which says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. It's a good biblical concept. Look at your life and throw off anything that will slow you down, get in your way, or otherwise take you off track. Big idea number three for today. This one is critical. It's very important. And in all of the coaching work I do, this is probably one of the number one problems that we run across when people are struggling with their goals. And that is failure to have weekly reflection that keeps you aligned with whatever your goal is. And that might be a wordy way to say you need to have a weekly meeting with yourself. We call it goal review. A meeting with yourself to just take a look at your goals and say, am I on track? Am I not on track? If I am, amazing, keep going. If I'm not, what's getting in the way? There's principle number 2 again. Identify roadblocks, and how do I remove them so that I get back on track? If we do this weekly goal review, what it does is it causes this momentum to build in our lives that is just incredible. The world will look at you, people will look at you and think, how the heck do they stay so consistent all of the time? And it's because we have a weekly goal review that orients us toward our goals. And it's like magic, I'm telling you. Now, the opposite of that, what that looks like is you have your goals, your keystone habit, your roadblocks anticipated, and then it becomes out of sight, out of mind. Now, that's what most of the world struggles with in the personal growth lane, even spiritual development. I'm so excited about these goals, but then I'm going to get distracted or tired. And before you know it, it's been weeks since I've even thought about it. And then we get into the all start Monday loop, and it can be years before we ever actually restart again. So, a scripture for this point, weekly reflection that keeps you aligned would be Lamentations 3:40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. Regular examination of how you're showing up is a biblical concept. Okay. So, point number 1 is to make sure you have your keystone habit identified. Point number 2 is to remove roadblocks. Identify them, then remove them to the best of your ability. And then weekly reflection that keeps you aligned. So, let's put some action to this. This is your habit audit and our 3 points in action. So, identify your keystone habit. Ask yourself, what's one habit that would shift everything else if I stayed consistent? Okay. Then write down 3 roadblocks that you could anticipate and how you would begin to address them. And then schedule a weekly check in time for yourself, just 15 minutes every single week, no exceptions. I do mine on Sundays. It's not meant to be work, it's just reflection. You could do it on Monday morning. You could do it Friday for all I care. Just do it somewhere. It's important. This is how you build habits when motivation is gone. It's by having simple frameworks and good feedback loops. Okay. Really important work. That is our podcast episode for today. I'd be honored if you would share this podcast episode with your friends and drop me a comment, communicate with me. I love to hear your takeaways. Until next week, don't forget to subscribe and be known.